Now let's look at a brownfield use case. Brownfield changes are the ones which are most of our developers and teams are involved in more than 95% of the time. Not every time we start building things from scratch where AI really helps us, right? So what if we have to make a change in an existing code base? Here is an example of an application which is called AML Sentinel. It is an AI powered anti money laundering alert investigation assistant for banking compliance teams. On this application, different compliance teams can look at a particular alert, and compliance team members can change the status of a particular alert. They can escalate it with a reasoning, and AI can also help them to analyze it, right, with an AI investigation chat, as well as they can generate reports. Here is the analytics dashboard, if you see, which is having multiple cards on the top. I want to add another card which says the number of alerts which are unassigned as of today. I want to see a bar chart here because this place is empty. I want to utilize it. So those are the two changes that I want to make here. Okay. So what I'll do, I'll quickly go to my Visual Studio Code, and here is my Copilot, and I'm using Cloud Opus 4.6. My guide toolkit is already here. Now I will just say I would like to make a change in the analytics dashboard to add a chart which suggests the top 5 assignees along with their number of alerts that are assigned to them. I also want to add a card which suggests the number of assigned unassigned alerts. It's not going to immediately start building or making the change, which in ordinary ways without this particular toolkit it would have done. What it will do is it will follow the guidelines to create reverse engineering docs, and it will share the code changes with you before it can start making changes. So now you can clearly see that it is displaying a welcome message about guide AI software development practice, which is ours. And it also indicates what are different stages or phases and stages as part of those phases which are involved as part of this particular toolkit. Now, if you see, we have discover phase, build phase, and deploy phase. This is exactly same as what we saw in Greenfield. It's just that here the reverse engineering and workspace detection steps become very important because we have an existing code base. In previous Greenfield example, we didn't even talk about reverse engineering because there was no code existing in the first place. Now it says, I'll now begin the discover phase with workspace detection, which is our first phase here, right? First stage within the discover phase here. And it will analyze the workspace and set up the workflow tracking. As part of this, it says, good, this is a mature brownfield project. Let me now check for existing reverse engineering artifacts and create the initial state files. So what are state files? If you see guide docs, we have audit.md, which is having all the details of the chat that we are doing with AI, as well as it is logging its own work. For example, if you see, it says AI response workspace scan brownfield project detected. So whatever it's responding to the user here also, it is putting it in the chat. So tomorrow if something goes wrong, you can always go through this audit.md to check what went wrong to improve the rule engine later. If at all we see guide state.md, it talks about different stages, and we are in discover phase, and it has multiple stages within the discover phase, right? So right now we are at workspace detection. Now it has detected workspace. It says project type is brownfield, and it is also saying no existing reverse engineering artifacts found. So next step is proceed to reverse engineering to analyze the existing analytics code base relevant to your request. So what it will do, it will analyze the existing code base relevant to my request. My request is primarily for making changes in analytics dashboard. Hence, it will limit those and that analysis to those changes. So it is not rocking the boat. Specifically, it is very beneficial when you are working with very heavyweight production directories and they have millions of lines of codes, and you're just trying to make a change in one single package. You don't want to reverse engineer everything, right? So this pretty much helps you with that. So I will say proceed, and it will start working. Now again, it will go back to copilot instructions.md to check what is the next stage. So now it's proceeding with reverse engineering, and it will continue doing it. It will load the rule file, which is what we have provided it in our guide AI SDP, and analyze the existing code base. It will deeply analyze the existing and it will actually look into multiple different files. So it will continue doing this. Let's wait for it to complete. So now it is saying, I have thorough understanding of the code base now. Let me create all the reverse engineering documentation and update the audit log. The good part is when it starts creating reverse engineering documentation, it will show all the different documentation it's going to create. Now, all these documentations are not coming by default as a behavior from CoPilot or from Cloud Opus 4.6. Even though Opus 4.6 is a topmost reasoning model, it doesn't create these behaviors by default or to build these documents by default. But since we have provided those kind of instructions as part of this toolkit to make it very enterprise ready, by reverse engineering, it will create all these different artifacts which are required. Look at architecture.md here also, it will create mermaid diagrams. So if I just open one of the architecture files, it pretty much looks pretty, like a professional document. Then it talks to components, talks to custom hooks, and from there it goes to API service. And from there through HTTP request, it goes through backend fast API, right? So it gives you a complete understanding of how this whole application works, both technically as well as from the business perspective. It also generates the code structure.md file, which talks about, gives you complete understanding of the code structure here. So I'll just keep it. And see, it keeps updating these to-dos, which is a Copilot behavior. So Copilot is also showing you what all type of documents are there here, which it's creating. And it is picking it up from the whole workflow that we have integrated with, which is the Guide AI SDP workflow. It will also create API documentation. So look at this API documentation, gives you details of analytics endpoints, the GET APIs, um, which kind of APIs are there, what is their purpose. So if you look at this, which is the dependencies mapping, so it also gives you the dependencies, right? So front end pages, front end hooks, front end service. So this gives you a nice understanding of dependencies as well. So you can see that it is in the discover phase under reverse engineering folder. It has created all these documentation, technology stack, and it has created dependencies. It has created component inventory, code structure, code quality assessment also. So it is also giving you a high level code quality assessment, right? So if you look at what kind of code quality assessment it does, it says test coverage. So it checks whether you have test suits in the library. It says, yes, we have test suits, both front end and back end. So patterns and anti-patterns. So good patterns is separation of concerns, routes, repos, models, typed API boundary, async throughput, and then there are some anti-patterns as well. So what kind of anti-patterns is identified in my library? Non-significant, detected in the analytics related code. Minor, SQLite specific date handling. In get average investigation time, Python side parsing for ISO strings due to SQLite limitations. So it says from current scope, these are minor changes. And if we can correct them, that would be great. So there, it has not found any very glaring anti-pattern. And we are also working to include the security related guardrails and checks. So whenever it runs that particular check on the code base, it can give you some specifics around security concerns that you might see. For example, OS top 10 or SAST related vulnerabilities, which normally we use our code scanners. Has created the reverse engineering docs, and it is asking me to examine all the docs. So I can see if I'm expert, I can always review these documents and I can identify issues and I can just ask it to correct it. It is actually logging everything. So now reverse engineering is done and it has also put the date here. Now it will go to requirement analysis. Here it will actually look into my requirement. If you have this folder already there, the next time when you make a change in this code base, it will not do reverse engineering again because you've already done it. And this is the reason why we are giving the date here, so that next time it also knows what kind of commits happened after this particular date. Now it has asking me some clarifying questions before finalizing requirements. Please answer them in the question file I have created. Verifications questions. Let's look at the questions. For the top 5 assignees, chart which alerts should be counted per assignee. All alerts, only open alerts, only alerts currently in progress or review. So I can say A. I want all alerts. For the unassigned alerts card, which alerts should be counted? So I only want to see the number of unassigned alerts which are open today. That's why I'm saying only open alerts, new in progress review with no assigned assignee and list. Where should that unassigned alerts card be placed on the dashboard? Add as a fifth card in the existing summary cards row at the top. Place it as a standalone highlighted card above. So I would like to have the same look and feel. So I will say add it as the fifth card. So I'm done. So I'll just be done. Please proceed. So now it's going to proceed with the changes. No ambiguities, all answers are clear. Let me create the requirements document and update tracking. So again, it will create a requirements document. Now requirements document is created after verifications questions stage, because we need to make sure that people are answering questions and then only the final requirements are created. In case you don't like something or there is something missing in the requirements doc, you can always ask AI to correct it itself, and it will always go back and update its requirements doc. In case you see any other questions which you think that could have been asked but which are missing, you can always add those questions at the bottom, and AI would happily take your inputs even for the questions which it has not included initially, right? So there are two type of requirement as created. One is functional requirements and the other one is non-functional requirement. Functional are requirements are related to the business change or business use case. Non-functional requirements are related to the technical scalability, performance related changes. Now, it says ask for modification to the requirements if required based on your review, or add user stories, choose to include user story state. So what it is doing is, because of the requirements being very straightforward and it's very much specific to analytics page and dashboard, it says we have skipped based on the project simplicity. Now, I can all if I look at this, the guide state, right? So the user story stage has been skipped, right? So it is not going to follow it. But if I want, I can always say that no, I want user stories at this stage, right? So I will just for now I will just approve and let it move on in the interest of time. But if you see at this particular stage, you are saying user stories. We are still at discover phase, and we are saying user stories are conditional, and this is why it's conditional, because if the requirement is very simple, straightforward, you don't want to rock the boat and create the whole epic and user stories, right? And that's the reason why we are just keeping it simple here. Now update state with, so it is going to do the workflow planning, right? So user stories, so sorry, user stories, workflow planning, application design, unit generation has been skipped completely. And user stories, yeah, because see, it has been skipped. Workflow planning is completed, application design is skipped, unit generation is skipped. What is unit generation? Unit generation is like if at all your requirement is a bit complicated, or maybe it requires many services, many personas, and you want your team to work in parallel on different bits and pieces of the code. You can always have those specific units taken up by different teams. They can work in parallel, like how we do it today in agile, in sprints, and then let the team work parallelly, and then they can come back and merge their changes right into the main branch. So okay, cool. So 7 stages recommended to skip, right? User stories, application design, unit generation, because it is simple enhancement, no new architecture. In build phase also, it has just kept functional design, NFR requirements, NFR design, no new data models, NFRs or infra changes. If you want to see again, go to the build phase. It says NFR requirements access, NFR design, infrastructure design. So all these are conditional. Functional design, all these are conditional. If at all your changes are complicated, then it will do every stage and it will create design documents, ask you more questions at every stage, and basically go before it actually proceeds with the code generation, which is the last stage before the build and test. Okay. So what I can do, I can now it is also giving you an this guideline that package update sequence. It will first of all do backend changes, API must exist, and then it will go to and make the changes on the front end. Okay, so I can approve and continue. Create before building, what it will do, it will create a code generation plan, which is an interesting point, right? It is not going to still assume and then generate the code. It will still create a plan for you. You as a user review the code generation plan, make the changes if required, as required, and then approve for it to proceed with the code related changes, right? So at this stage, it's actually creating analytics enhancements code generation plan. This is the plan it has created. Now, different functions it is adding in existing services. It's also adding some schemas to existing services, pydantic schemas. It is also creating root endpoints, extend overview. So you are getting all the details, like what you could have done, would have done if at all you were not using AI today. Now let me just keep it and I'll say approve and continue. Dot hyphen underscore repo dot py. So these test cases already existing. This particular file was already existing. If you see under tests folder, it has identified the test cases created for test analytics, and it has specifically created these test cases here. Now, this is really a good part to see for your QA testers, right? Because normally the QA testing team may have to create multiple test cases, specifically for from the user perspective, which is for the front end, but also from the backend API perspective, right? So this particular suite is not only identifying the needed test cases, but also it is creating those test cases, implementing them in form of Python scripts, and embedding those test cases, more importantly, in an existing repo file itself. So it identified it because it did reverse engineer and identified which repo belongs to which particular type of test cases, and then it's embedding it. It's very important. So now the job of your QA testing team is to ensure that they validate these test cases, they look at what is expected from the user, and if there is anything missing, we can always chat with this particular IDE and ask that I wanted to make this change, right? I want to add this test case. So it becomes more of like reviewing and adding test cases rather than spending a lot of time to build things from scratch. So it gives a lot of power to you, and it becomes really um, helpful when you are actually making the change in that particular code base, because everything is so structured, right? Now it is doing, so it has done all the backend changes. Now it is making the changes in the front end types. It will also do tests for front end. The build code generation part is completed, and it will also update the audit.md, which is this one. Now all 15 files steps of the code generation plan have been done. Front end changes also it's summarizing for you. Code and complete, request changes, continue to build and test. Yes, of course. But at this stage, you can always go back, check the code base that it has there. So the reason why it is asking you to approve, and I'm not looking at it because I'm just recording this demo, but expectation is when a developer is working on it, at every stage they can go back and check the code and they can start working with AI in a more question answer manner and probably highlight some of the challenges or issues. So there are now 11 tests added, existing test updated to code coverage 100%, right? So now it is saying build test instructions, install dependencies, build front end, troubleshoot. So now it is giving the control back to you, which is the user, to build and test it. Run backend, front end, 3 manual, browser scenario for end-to-end verification, and build and test summary. right? So now I will say, could you please run the tests for me? Also, please use the virtual environment of Python that we have installed on this project in the system. So I'm giving specific instruction to run it locally, and I'm asking it to run it. So see, it is running the test cases now. Look at this. So let me just expand this. So now, because I gave the instructions of the virtual environment, it started it ran these test cases in the virtual environment, and there's some test cases which have failed, right? So now it will check 351 passed, 2 failed, 28 skipped. The two failures are in test investigation routes, AI dependent tests unrelated to our change. So these two are AI related tests. And since we have not provided Gemini API keys, of course, these two will fail. All new analytics test pass. Now let me run the final front end test. So it is now running the front end test. So there's zero failure front end, two for back end, which is known issues. Now servers are running and it goes here, the analytics dashboard, and it gives two for me and rest of them are one. So this is okay. This is fine, right? So here we are. This is how we make the brownfield change. Started with, the brownfield use cases. It gave me the complete methodology that it has done. It is gonna run. In the guide docs, it has actually built the summary, test summary, how to build the test, what are the build instructions. This is for the people if you are going to take it further. And then we have discover phase. We have execution plan. We have the good part is the reverse engineering, right? So the whole documentation is here. I can always ask it to create a nice unified document, a Word document for myself. So see, these kind of front end, so these architecture diagrams are there, which I can open. Then it is business overview diagrams are there. And then we have code quality assessment as well, which is interesting bit. Then we have code structure, which is this one, right? So the code structure, complete code structure, what is the component inventory, dependencies, and reverse engineering timestamps, which is what all artifacts it has generated. It also keeps the timestamp when the reverse engineering was done. So you keep a track of it, and then what is the technology stack? So backend API, data seeding, database. So Python 3.11, TypeScript, TSX, JSX, SQL. All of it is pretty much available here, and of course your guide.md and audit.md files. So this is the complete log of that. I can always analyze later and basically make sure that next time when I work with AI, I will be not making that mistake. So I'll actually give explicit instructions to AI before it. So yeah, that's where we are. The guide AI SDP. Uh, it can handle both greenfield and brownfield. It can help you to create documentation. It can help you create perfect enterprise level of guardrails, guardrail development. And good part is all your application, all your software development teams can work with it. QA testers can look into the code, QA test cases. They can also generate some test cases. They can pass on the test cases. I can give those test cases to it, and it can consider those while building this, making these changes. And it enables your software developers, of course, product developers can be part of it. And the requirement gathering piece is something where product developers and BAs come into picture and do the heavy lifting. Thank you so much for listening, and feel free to reach out to hello@deployproai.com and love to work with you. Thank you.